All right, you're in.
So here we go again on our own.
That is exactly right.
So I would just say we do a flying start, as we say, and I would say so. Welcome to the show, Forrest Smith again. So today we're recording with the CEO of the company Kineon, and we're gonna talk about his new device that came out called the Move Plus. And before I'll describe it, I'll give the word to the CEO, Mr. Forrest Smith. Thanks for being here and taking the time, having a nice conversation with us. And the first question I always ask is, so what's the source of your being, but not in a super metaphorical way, but can you explain a little bit your background, who you are, what's your background, and how did this product, fold into existence?
All right. That's a big broad question, but I think creativity and growth is kind of a core to who I am and what I'm focused on as a person. And I feel like there's a great way to grow both from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. And we spend a lot of time, myself and our team spend a lot of time in the medical literature because there's good support. We feel like science really supports how you can find where those Pareto principle 80-20 time and energy and resource spends can go that are going to give you the highest leverage from your time. And that's actually how this came into being, how our product has come into being. We are focused as a team on the core mission of improving the quality of life for the largest number of people we can in the most substantial way we can. And this is a mission that we've crafted over time and refined and has really kind of come to drive all of the strategic and tactical decisions that we found, whether it's pricing, our go-to-market strategy, our timing, everything from a product design standpoint has really been designed around what can we do to move the needle for people from a quality of life standpoint. And one of the things that we've assumed with this is that if light therapy, which is a very effective treatment modality, wasn't strapped or chained to the wall, and if it wasn't, $100,000 devices or $30,000 devices for the clinical level devices, that it could actually be an amazing treatment modality for people and help them reduce inflammation, which is a huge scourge from a health and wellness standpoint. So we've been focused on reducing the friction and the cost and any kind of pain point we could find for the adoption of photobiomodulation or light therapy by a broader audience, because we feel it should be a gold standard treatment for pain and inflammation, because the current gold standard treatments have so many problems. And I think we could probably go into those in a little bit more detail. But I'd imagine that many of your listeners already understand that opiates, NSAIDs, ice, rest ice, compression, elevation. These are modalities of treatment for pain and inflammation that just aren't optimal. And we've been really working as a team, both from our physiology team and our medical side and our product side, to be able to reduce that friction so that people can actually have a reasonable option to address the underlying issues that drive the pain and inflammation. So that was a big question. Hopefully the answer wasn't too extensive, but I think it's important for us to really kind of have been driven by this mission and have a mission that's very measurable and that we can be held accountable. That's not up in the clouds. We're actually able to execute on and measure and hold ourselves accountable for the outcomes.
Mm-hmm. So this is when they say, or I would say, red light therapy is what I call the creatine of biohacking supplements, so gadgets. Sorry. So and what I mean with this is that it's not the question anymore if red light therapy is beneficial to humans, and we're gonna talk about that there are specific differences, for example, between LED and laser. But it's not the question and not the concern and nor the topic in this talk if it is beneficial. But as you already stressed, is we are trying to find out more economic ways, not only budget-wise, but also in how can people, respectively patients, for those who are therapeutic, have a therapeutic work or background, how can you give something to a patient that the patient really applies? Because as you already said, so there are gold standard machines and devices out there, like, I mean, sand on the beach, but the thing is always they are super expensive the bigger they are. And then the question arises, which I'd like you to answer later, if bigger is always better in this context, or if it's more a better approach if it's the quality of the laser, respectively the LED. But in design, people say that the form follows function. So, and for those, for the audience who only listens to the podcast, I'm showing the device into the camera now. But if you don't have video access, you can go to the website, and I will post everything in the video below. But what the Move Plus is you can think of this as, yeah, let's say 3 small devices, and they have, yeah, like double like the how do you call this in English, the shape of a window on a boat. Yeah, you have
Yes,
a
port, like a window port on a boat.
Okay, port. Okay, so and it's a double port window, and it's a small device about the size of a normal thumb of a human. And on the back side, you can switch it on, and you have 3 of those devices in a special. Yeah, it comes in a nice charging console, and then you can charge it on your USB on your computer or wherever you want, and then you can switch it on. And by switching it on, yeah, you'll activize all the other 3 devices. And if you want to use it, the cool thing is that you can use it with a belt. So this means it comes with an elastic band, like a rubber band, and this makes it super accessible for topical use. So you can adjust the band on angles, whether it's your knee, your rotator cuff, your whatsoever, your ankle. And the cool thing is that this makes it super versatile in the context of treatment, because you have mentioned the Pareto principle. You can use this device while doing something simultaneously, and this is what I really appreciate about this product, because as far as I know, this is the most flexible one. You can use the most versatile one, whereas when you have to lie underneath a red light panel, this takes a lot of time, and in this time you cannot do something else. So in a nutshell, was this the main concern? You already said that you wanted to make things more accessible and more available, but was it also the shape you had in mind first, or was it more about condensing super big machines into a portal one?
There was a lot of design challenges with this product, and with the goal of, again, reducing the friction and the cost. I'll talk you through some of our logic for the decisions we've made from a design standpoint. One of the things that we found was a friction point for people was when you have large devices that are plug-in devices and you have to sit with them, you're restricted in where you can use it. You can't travel with it. You can't carry it. And all of these points were things that made it harder to develop a habit. And this is what we found as one of our goals with the reduced friction is we'd like to see our users for best results using these devices 4 to 5 days a week. And to do that, it's our job to make it convenient for them. And so to reduce the size, to get it to a battery-driven device versus a wall-driven device, we've taken a design step to be able to use new types, next generation lasers that are called vertical cavity surface emission lasers, or VCSELs, that are smaller and cheaper and didn't really exist when we started the project. So we've had to go out and really adopt early these type of lasers that one of the things we've got a very strong background in. I spent 20 years building supply chain and innovation groups in China, and we've got a strong supply chain background for this. And one of the principles we found that's very useful for supply chain is when you need to reduce cost, map yourself into large volume industries and kind of use them as a bellwether for where the pricing is going to go. So what we did is we said, look, to be able to do this, we have to have the price below $500. We could not do that with the lasers that existed at the point when we started the project. So we looked into upstream manufacturers for lasers and the epitaxy fabs for how these lasers are made. And the two industries that were going to drive the volume, and when the volume increases, the prices decrease, but that were going to drive the volume the most were LiDAR for autonomous cars and cell phones. And so in your iPhone, I got an iPhone here as an example. If you have an iPhone that's newer than, I believe, an 11 or 12, these VCSEL parts are what allows the iPhone to scan your face and open your phone for you. And so we saw this adoption curve coming. And so we've adopted VCSELs to be able to help us reduce the size and be able to make these personalized devices versus something that you have to go to a clinic to use. But I think you're exactly right about the straps as well. What we advise for habit building for this is don't do it on its own. Do it in conjunction with another habit that you already have, that you already execute on a daily basis. So, and this doesn't have to be, so in my case, I try to choose a healthy habit that I've already got. So I do my meditation every morning, my meditation and heart rate variability biofeedback breathing every morning. So I pair this in every day with that treatment, with that kind of habit that I've already built. And we call this habit stacking. But the interesting thing is you don't need to, because not everybody's going to do it with a healthy habit. You don't need to do it with a healthy habit. You just need to find a habit that you have that exists. It could be watching Netflix every night. And it's not the healthiest thing to sit around and watch your Netflix at your house. But if it's something that you do every day, that habit will help you take on this new habit and keep it longer. And so this is how we've advised our users to be able to stack habits to get the best results long term.
So this would be something like a positive version of a Trojan horse, where you say, okay, you're already doing something, so you're integrating something, and over time, then it becomes for itself what you call habit stacking. And this is an interesting point, or an important point, because what I tell patients all the time is it's all about consistency and something I call therapy trust, because you can have the best device in the world, but if you don't use it, it's not worth anything. Yeah, I mean, and what you say, I mean, the term regularly or frequently, has to be defined. I mean, once a year could be frequent, could be regular, but not frequently. So I hope the listeners and the audience gets the point. So even with a super cool device like the Move Plus, you will have to use it, and nor the inventor nor a therapist can make you use it. So if you use this cool strategy, it might be easy and you even won't notice it. I mean, you could iron your clothes or whatsoever and do your laundry or wash the dishes and still wear it, or you can wear it while driving the car. I mean, depends on where you wear it, but just to make sure that you don't have to sacrifice time to use this device. You can use it by working on the computer or something else. So it's not like when people say, I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we know this is BS because we all have the same time. But I can understand that people say, okay, I'm super busy. I'm an executive. I have to take 4 million phone calls a day and blah, blah, blah. So that they cannot just say, okay, I go now 1 hour just to do red light therapy, for example. But you could write your emails or take a telephone call and still use it. So this is a really cool thing. And so you've already mentioned before that the Move Plus is not just an ordinary red light therapy device, I mean, I have a red light lamp from my grandfather who was a medical doctor from the 50s. I think it's like this size, and you cannot touch it for 2 hours after you switch it off because you will, your skin will will melt off. And so you explained that how far technology came. But what I want you to explain is why did you include LEDs and laser technology? And for those who are still not familiar with the difference, yeah, what's the idea behind that?
Sure, and it's an excellent question. There are a number of studies positive on both laser and LED from a photobiomodulation therapy standpoint. And so when we started the project, we were actually skewing towards using just LEDs. But to answer the question, we have to go into, I think, what makes good photobiomodulation or light therapy products versus just okay products. And that's dosing. And so we've spent with our team, we identified dosing as the key for us being able to deliver the outcomes we wanted to our users. And we've spent, between our physiology team and our product design team, thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours, building out our own proprietary model for the light delivery. And to talk a little bit about that and why it's so important, it's very much like pharmaceuticals. There's what's known as a biphasic dose curve, which is to say an XY axis curve, which looks like a sine curve, where as you increase the dosage up to a certain point, you will increase the beneficial outcome. After that point, it goes down the bottom of that curve, and you lose those positive outcomes. And so there's very good medical literature on this. And so when we started our model, we built our model basically on how light is dispersed within the body. And we've got a mathematical model on this, but we also use physical testing from a physiological standpoint to dial in or optimize this model over time. And so the tens of thousands of hours that we put into this have shown us that to deliver the optimal outcomes, we need both red and infrared light. So we use 650 nanometer deep red LEDs, and the LEDs don't penetrate as far as red doesn't penetrate as far as infrared into the body, and LEDs emit in what's known as a Lambertian pattern, which is to say LED chips emit in all directions, and then they are packaged into a small cup-like LED package called a PLCC package, which diverts that light from 360 degrees back into a 120-degree pattern. We found that with our dosing model, the most effective outcomes for the red, because the red and infrared are synergistic. So we're dosing the shallower tissue with the red, but if we have a 120-degree dispersion pattern, then the dispersal within even the shallow tissue is not effective. And so we've actually added a primary optic to our LEDs to reduce that 120-degree emission pattern back down to 30 degrees. With the lasers, we are using infrared lasers to penetrate to the deeper tissue. And this is particularly useful for joint and neuromuscular pain and inflammation from inside the body. But if you're trying to penetrate to synovial fluid, for example, in your knee, the red lights are not enough. And so we use the red lights to bring more blood to the surface areas. And then when you have more blood in the surface areas, that works synergistically with the infrared light, where we're penetrating to the synovial tissue and the internal tissue to be able to deliver better blood flow to the internal tissue as well. And so we're using essentially lasers like these vertical cavity surface emission lasers emit in a 10-degree by 20-degree elliptic pattern. But they also emit where the LEDs essentially spray light. The lasers emit in a very collimated and direct and coherent light that allows the penetration and the delivery of the correct level of photons to the internal tissue. So it's a very long answer to say what we've done is we've optimized the synergistic effect of shallow red light with internal, deeper infrared light for the optimal outcome for the users.
Mm-hmm. So this was a very technical answer. So for those for the audience who's not so familiar with different types of the application of red light, an LED is, as you explained, has a very or a rather comparatively wide angle. I always say this is more like a shotgun. Yeah, you cannot you try to aim something that is very near, but if you hit it, it's only hit by small bullets. And the laser would be a sniper rifle, where you can say, okay, you cannot hit a big area, but you can go straight between the eyes, like in a bullseye. So, and as you said, the laser always is coherent, which means it narrows the focus of the light super down, and the LED is more like a broad angle. And you already mentioned this. I think this is really important to mention because, as you said, there are tons of red light devices, but the laser is a total different thing because you already mentioned joints. Cartilage in the joint is not very well supported with blood. So this is why it heals so slowly compared to, let's say, your fingertips or something. They are super enriched with blood vessels and stuff like that. This is why you, when you look at a homunculus, this little drawn human that has large hands, huge lips, where you see every day where something is big, you have lots of nerves and lots of blood vessels. But in the joints, in the cartilage, in your discs, in your column, in your spine, this is all stuff that heals very slowly. And this is where you can apply the Move Plus's laser, because as you said, it has to, you have to have a specific penetration of the deep of the skin. So skin is in different layers, but if you want to reach specific layers in the depth of the skin, it's not sufficient only to have a LED, but you also need the LED even if you want to work on a locally on a joint, because you need a specific area to be lightened up, because if it's too, you cannot, how can I explain? You cannot look at the world through a straw. Neither does it work in a joint. So you still need a specific area that has to be lightened up. And this is the cool thing when you use the specific or separate devices or pieces. You can adjust it the way you want. It's not like in a machine that is statically built, where you have like a brick shaped something, that you can only apply in a specific angle, and then you must arrange yourself down the LEDs, even if you have a huge thing. Okay, this might work if you have a big device where the whole body is covered, but nobody has that, or almost nobody, unless you're super rich. And this is, so I'm losing track. I didn't know what did I wanted to say. Yeah, I think I just want to add everything and translate it a bit more in a non-technical way. And
I love the idea of shotgun versus sniper rifle. And I would say, to add on to that analogy, if you have a door blocking the sniper rifle from a shot, it's hard to find that shot. So using that analogy, you use the shotgun to open the door, and the sniper rifle to shoot the bad guy inside.
So you have the best of two worlds. Yeah.
Yes,
so
that's right.
yeah.
Great.
Okay. So
and just while
okay,
sorry, just sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Point about the blood flow and cartilage. And we get a question about cartilage quite a lot from a regrowth standpoint, which is, I've heard because of the blood flow being low that I can't regrow cartilage. Is that true? And
no.
Yeah, that's right. The simple answer is no, but the kind of slightly deeper answer is that typically your body wants a homeostasis of growth and then kind of degradation of tissue. And so you want to make sure that you're growing at the same rate that your tissue is dying off or becoming unusable. And what you'll see is, particularly with people with old injuries or chronic inflammation in the joint or in the synovial fluid, is that inflammation will do two things to impact that homeostasis and throw it out of balance. One is increase the degradation rate of the cartilage, particularly the extracellular matrix, which is essentially kind of the matting of your the collagen matting that is inside your cartilage. And then the other thing is to reduce the growth rate. So you're essentially how your cartilage grows from a high level is you have chondroblasts. They are faster growing cell type that generate chondrocytes. And so as you have a line of chondroblasts that are kind of growing new chondrocytes on the back end, those chondrocytes get distributed within your extracellular matrix by emitting and helping the growth pattern of this extracellular matrix. So they're growing this kind of fibrous cartilage structure for you, but they're embedded there. These chondrocytes are embedded there and don't grow back very fast. So what we found with the photobiomodulation, particularly in the knee joints, because there's just more research around this, is that we can help to increase the growth rate of chondroblasts. And there's a number of ways that it happens, but it goes very technical. And my team gives me a hard time about going down these rabbit holes. But the takeaway is for users that you can both increase the growth rate, and it still doesn't become fast. It doesn't become like fingernails or hair or something like this, but it becomes faster. And so when you're treating yourself to reduce that inflammation, you reduce that degradation rate, which if you have chronic inflammation is much faster than it should be, and you increase the rate of chondroblast generation so that you can make your own cartilage faster over time. And that's in the months scale, just to set expectations correctly. We're not here selling magic pills or anything like this. That's months. But
snake oil. Yeah.
Yes, we don't have essential oil or snake oil or crystals to sell you. But from an expectation standpoint, what we're so happy about and why we feel like this should be the gold standard kind of world-class treatment for this type of tissue damage and chronic inflammation long-term is the other option for this is taking NSAIDs like Tylenol or ibuprofen or Aleve or these different types of painkillers that mute or mask the pain, but they also increase the degradation rate over time. And so you can take something that's going to reduce the pain and increase the degradation rate so that you have a larger underlying problem long-term. And that's what doctors are telling people to do right now, which is, one of the things that we do is we work with a number of medical practitioners who really want to see the data. And so we provide a lot of data and we can give you some of the same, as you're very technical and your audience may be interested as well. I'm happy to pass on some of the summaries of the literature that we've made for these medical practitioners, because what we find is someone who went to medical school 20 or 30 years ago, the standard of treatment for this type of pain is give someone these type of pills. And that means there's just inertia in the world. It doesn't mean that these guys are bad people or terrible doctors or whatever. It just means they haven't heard about a better solution for it. So we do a lot of education with medical practitioners for being able to adopt a better gold standard or a better best practices for what to prescribe for these type of injuries or these type of chronic inflammation points in the body. Because what we'd love to see long-term is that people stop using these damaging pharmaceuticals and start moving towards something that's really going to help them address what the underlying causes are, versus really accelerating what's been the underlying cause in the first place.
Yeah, correct. And just for the protocol, we are, and for the listeners, we are not going, we're not giving medical advice, nor we are trying to sell you gas station sex pills or something like that. So, but the thing is, you mentioned the behavior of today's. I mean, this is everywhere in the world, pretty much, I guess, the same. And in German, we have a proverb that says, well, literally translated would mean you don't look over the edge of your plate. So the English equivalent is to people don't look outside of their box. And this is what you said. I think the answer to, for example, a lot of medical doctors, they're not bad, but most of them have no background in sports, in fitness, in whatsoever. They just can give you those tools they have in their toolbox, and they say, okay, this is the best I can give you, so take it or leave it. And just for the protocol again, I mean, I think the medical medicine is very good with everything that is acute. Yeah, the more acute it is, like trauma surgery and stuff like this, is brilliant work and brilliant technology, but it tries to fail with everything that becomes chronic.
Yes.
But this is also what I already mentioned with therapy trust, where it comes, or it's the responsibility of the patient. So of course, if you have a car accident, you can go to the emergency room, and because you cannot operate yourself, and or at least you shouldn't, but then the more chronic it is, the more it's your responsibility. I mean, you could use a Move Plus on your, let's say you mentioned the knee, but there's a reason why you have a problem in your knee. And most likely it's because you're obese or you're malnutritioned, and the list goes on. So you cannot give the hopes, and I mean, hope is not a strategy. You cannot buy a Move Plus and say, okay, I'm gonna pop my pills, I'm gonna eat from my fast food chain, and try to be healthy. I mean, this is this narrative that is going on right now in the world with this body positivity, where people say, okay, you can be obese and still be healthy. No, you cannot, at least not from my point of view. And
it's a personal pet peeve as well. I see that quite a lot. And, you know, one of the things that really, I think, underlines that point is, and is a really a driver for so much of the human pathologies, whether it's you know, osteoarthritis, whether it's dementia, whether it's neurological based issues, is the inflammation that is increased when you are obese. The cardiovascular disease, so highly correlated with obesity. Kind of one of the big mediators for that is the inflammation that you have systemically. That's driven by the unhealthy, you know, the essentially the types of free fatty acids you have floating around your system, the unhealthy adipose tissue that you've aggregated, but. So obesity and inflammation kind of go hand in hand. Inflammation and illness go hand in hand, and it's why you see this link between obesity and illness to such a high degree. But people are also, I think, at least I was unaware about how much inflammation is driven by old injuries and chronic injuries, where you've seen, for example, we deal a lot with knee pain, with shoulder pain, with torn muscle tissue that you'll see from a lot of the athletes that we work with. And again, I didn't know this when we started into this from a medical literature standpoint, but one thing that's become more and more trackable and a larger, and you know, it's more visible now from the medical literature over the last 10 years, is when you have a chronic inflammation in a joint, that doesn't stay in that joint. What you'll see is you know, pain and inflammation in that joint tissue locally. You'll see also slightly less damaging, but still very damaging. In the region, you'll see the microvasculature impacted. So if you've torn your ACL in one of your knees, and you're going to have a trigger for inflammation at a higher rate over time because of that, you'll see that your quads are actually up to 1 to 2 degrees colder relative to the healthy leg, because the microvasculature has been damaged by the leaking of that inflammation regionally. And this was shocking for me when I found it. There's been some studies with NFL players recently, and those NFL players who had ACL tears also had a 50% increase in the rate of severe cardiovascular disease decades on. decades on, so what's happened is they've traced that back to the stiffening of endothelial cardiovascular tissue. So the insides of your veins and your arteries and your blood distribution network becomes stiffer because of that small, what feels like a small localized leak of inflammation over decades really adds up, and you see that impact people's cardiovascular systems. That drives it. A 50% increase is huge. So again, these are things where we've been lucky enough to spend some time in the physiology and the research from a medical literature standpoint, and have kind of come upon some really almost shocking discoveries over the past 10 years that are not small studies. These have actually grown. They've started off with small studies that trigger a red flag, and then people go back in and expand on those. But the idea that people still don't know that this localized inflammation can damage your heart and your cardiovascular system, and the same thing from being obese. If body positivity, there's no reason to treat someone poorly for being obese, but it should not be considered that they have some level of health, the same level of health as someone would when they don't have that level of obesity, because it's driving systemic inflammation that is just going to damage health and wellness long term, both from a mental and physical standpoint.
Absolutely agree. So guys, listen to that, and if necessary, if you listen to this video right now, pause, rewind, and listen to this again. So of course, just for the record, I mean, being obese doesn't make you a bad person, but we gotta stop telling people that it's healthy. I'm not talking about 5 kilo plus, for example, but if you are 40 kilo plus on your left leg, this is goddamn not healthy for you. If you like it, okay, I'm fine with it, but by all means, it's not healthy. And what I wanted to add is that for those who are not so into the medical stuff, you've been talking about inflammation. So to make this clear, an acute inflammation is a positive thing. This is a good and reaction of your body. You want this because you need it for faster wound healing and stuff like that. But when it becomes chronic, it's a problem. And as you described, one of those metabolic syndrome problems, that it can it can grow literally and move from its source of origin into something else, and then you could get a heart attack. That doesn't mean that if you had an ACL, so an ACL is anterior crucial ligament tear, that you end up with a heart attack or stuff like that automatically. But those things can happen, and they are interlinked. So, and the question I want you to ask is, what's your opinion on, I mean, you can use your device Move Plus, but would you also recommend things like, I mean, you cannot grow something on concrete, right? Except dandelion. But so in order to enhance the effect of a Move Plus, would you recommend increasing stuff or the intake like collagen, glycine, and amino acids? They support the building blocks for cartilage, or glucosamine, chondroitin, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. But would you recommend eating those building blocks to make sure that people have what it takes to I mean, of course you can use laser LED, use the vasodilation, you will have a better blood flow, but I don't think this will be sufficient alone to build all that stuff up, especially in cartilage.
That's right. You can't build your house without bricks. And so two of the you mentioned a few there, two of the ones that have the heaviest kind of support from the medical literature are glucosamine sulfate and chondroitin sulfate. Those are very well supported and work synergistically with the photobiomodulation. There is early support for collagen as well, and I don't have that in front of me right now, but there were some types of collagen that were more effective than others, and I'm happy to dig that back out and pass it over to you if that's of interest for your audience. But there is support for positive outcomes increasing and synergistic benefit of those with photobiomodulation. So that's a very good point. Is nothing's happening in your body in a vacuum. Everything is connected. Diet, exercise, mitochondrial health. You mentioned metabolic disorder. It's one of the things that we see as kind of a one of the pathologies of modern life, of not moving enough, of overeating, of eating too many carbs and high combination of carbs and fat together. So standard American diet is typically how they call that. All of these are triggers for chronic inflammation. Seed oils have actually been in the news a lot more recently from some research for triggering increased inflammation systemically. But what you can do to reduce these is supplements. You can increase your metabolic health from a dietary standpoint. You can do things like cyclical ketogenic diets. You can do intermittent fasting. Actually has been one of the ones that myself and a number of our team have found a positive benefit for. Intermittent fasting combined with zone 2 cardiovascular training or cardiopulmonary training, I guess that could be considered, is all things that you can do to increase your mitochondrial and metabolic health. And that if you are kind of borderline from an obesity or metabolic disorder standpoint, those are all fantastic ideas to be involved with.
So speaking of mitochondrial health, do you have any experience or, I mean, of course, this is not medical advice, but there's still knowledge, what I call out of the trenches. The combination of red light therapy, respectively the Move Plus, and methylene blue, because this is something recently that came up in the, I would say, in the biohacking scene, that people have seen very good outcome with the combination of both.
Yes, so there are some very good kind of recent studies on this, and we've actually been digging further into it over the past month or so. We had a discussion with Ben Greenfield while in Mexico visiting, and it was one of the topics that came up and that we've been digging into. But they appear from our early kind of dive into this from a research standpoint to work synergistically on separate mitochondrial efficiency kind of efficiency and signaling molecules. And so we're digging a bit further into that, and we'll probably publish something, or we'd love to jump back on maybe for a deep dive on essentially the benefit of kind of both of these together, of a synergistic treatment with these on metabolic health.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm wondering, because methylene blue has this unique thing that it has to do with the electron transport chain, and I don't want to go for those who are not super nerds in biohacking wise, but it's a unique how do you call this in English? Antioxidant. It's an antioxidant, but it bypasses the electron transport chain, and this is what it makes it special is that you don't have oxidative stress. And if you could pair this with red light therapy, it would be great. And another question is, have you tried to combine methylene blue with your red light device and something that is called DMSO with its dimethyl sulfoxide, which is really cool? You're familiar with that?
I have read some papers with it, but I haven't used it as a supplement.
Okay, so I would actually, it's not, you don't take it like pill-wise, it's more of a fluid you can dilute with. I use it, for example, as a nose spray and for the eye. But you could use it, you could try this and play a little around with that using DMSO with methylene blue and the Move Plus, because you have the laser and the the LED. So we have the different nanometers of the spectrum, and you have the DMSO, which will make sure that the methylene blue will be transported even deeper in the tissues. You're not working on the surface of your skin, but you really can penetrate it, and then you can combine your LED laser, your LED and the laser, and work more. So I would say it's like a turbocharger maybe for the Move Plus, but this is something only I've been playing around with. So this is no medical advice, just to give it out as an information, because information puts people in a specific formation. And another question is, let's stick a little bit to this topic, because I think this is super interesting. And for those who want to know more about the Move Plus, let's say a 101, I would recommend you guys listen to the episode with Forrest and my fellow biohacking colleague Anthony Di Clementi, who did a really cool podcast. And if you like, you could listen to Anthony's and my episode too. So first, the question is, have you combined the Move Plus with, let's say, more traditional stuff like cupping, gua sha, and acupuncture, or acupressure and stuff like that? Because this is something, I mean, acupressure is something you can do everywhere and anywhere. You don't need fancy equipment, and everybody has access to that.
So 100%, this is an excellent question. So as a little background, I spent about 20 years in China, and I'm a big fan of, I've been in competitive sports while I've been there. And so particularly with things like rugby and CrossFit, you get a lot of soft tissue injuries. And what I've found is acupuncture, acupressure, and gua sha have been extremely effective in recovery, both from just general training, but also from soft tissue injuries that I've had in the games or training that I've done with these higher impact kind of sports. So I'm a big fan of these in general. The one that I've tried and found the most effective to date with the photobiomodulation is the gua sha, which is essentially scraping. And so for those of you for those members of your audience who haven't really tried this before, haven't seen it, there's metal or wood instruments that you can use, typically with oil, so that you don't kind of get a discomfort on the skin level, to be able to kind of break up tissue in your soft tissue, and bring additional blood flow. And there's a number of benefits. But what I've been using it for is if I do heavy training, one of the things that we see with, for example, high volume, mid-range weight. So as an example, I'll do, 300 front rack lunges with a couple of 50-pound dumbbells. If I do that, I know I'm going to be sore. It's one of those things where at that volume, at that weight, it's not a super challenging weight, but that volume really drives a lot of stress onto your muscles. And what you'll find is when you're doing that high volume, it increases muscle inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, creatine kinase, a number of different markers where you can actually measure that inflammation change in your muscles. If you're using a device like the Move Plus, you can reduce that by roughly 60 to 80%. So by a huge amount, you can reduce the muscle inflammation markers. But you can also, one of the nice things about that is it reduces the delayed onset muscle soreness, so that you can actually walk around without like having to kind of teeter-totter the next day. What I've found is if I do that with the scraping, or if I have kind of a soft tissue damage, I'll sprain my lower back occasionally, or my quads actually get overloaded with some of the training we do. I will do this with those, and the recovery is amazing, is shortened dramatically, and is the outcomes from that, from a performance standpoint, are just awesome. So it's been something where I do that particularly when the training is heavy, or if there's a bruise or bruising strain, or kind of lower level soft tissue damage in part of my physiology from the training that I am doing. And it's an awesome question. That's a N of one. I have to say that's not a huge study out there saying that this is a confirmed or that we understand the mechanisms for it. But my personal testing with this has been amazing to date.
And the cool thing of gua sha is to work with the Move Plus is when you do gua sha, you scrape on the skin, and then something occurs that it's called petechia, and which is for those who are not familiar, just in a nutshell, is that the audience knows what we're talking about. You move it along the skin, and then petechia arises, which is the effect of vasodilation, which means the diameter of your little blood vessels, they get expanded due to nitric oxide that is released in this area. And you don't harm the skin. It's not blood, but it looks like you fell off your skateboard and you stopped on the street. So, and then if you're familiar with reading this skin effects, you then could see, okay, where is the issue, what I call issue in the tissue, and then you could apply the Move Plus locally on that spot. Of course, you should be careful not to place a laser or something on an open wound or stuff like that, but of course, this is, I'm just mentioning it because common sense nowadays is not so common anymore. And you should not apply it on if you have like skin problems and stuff like that. But you could use it on scars. You could use the Move Plus on scars because scars, for example, are, well, to be honest, it's kind of useless substitute tissue. Yeah. So, but when you work with red light on scars, you can break up this scar tissue, and you can try to remodulate and it, for example, with DMSO, to build it back into more functional skin, because scars will also restrict your movement. And just as a little tip. And what I like about is if the Move Plus, something I have not touched yet, is that with this thing you give it back you give health back into people's hands. So because nowadays we tend to see a specialist everywhere, so a specialist for the left kidney and a specialist for the right toe, and yeah, you get the idea. So but we have conditioned ourselves to be to not do something on our own. I mean, 100 years back, there was no doctor available in every little town or whatsoever. So people had to do and take care of themselves. But nowadays they say, okay, blah, 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 I'm going to see this specialist. And this is what we have been talking about before, that the specialist might be so specialized that he will look at the world through a straw and say, hey, I'm a specialist for the left kidney. I can only give you stuff for the left kidney. If you have an issue with the right one, you got to see a different nephrologist. Yeah? And this is a cool thing to a bit sum this up and to have a little conclusion of our talk, because we already gave so much information, and I'd rather do a second round than overload people's minds, because all those informations have to be digested as well. So if you want to draw a conclusion, I see the big benefit in that you've created something that is unique in the way that it's in its application method, and it's super versatile. And the price, of course, everybody has to earn some money because we have to pay bills, but it's a price that is for most people affordable, and not something that you say, okay, I have a super cool device, but it's so expensive that you cannot buy it yourself. And even if you want to see a doctor or a therapist or something, that you will have to go to the office, you have to take time off and blah blah blah. You get it, you drive there, you drive back, and then you lose time you could invest in something else. Of course, it's always a question of priorities, but I see it as a nice tool that people can apply by themselves without having any knowledge, medical knowledge whatsoever. I mean, just to stress this again, if you're not a super idiot, you cannot harm yourself with this unless you would look into the laser or something like that. So
I think that's such a great validation to hear you say these. That's really been our goal. Again, it comes back to our mission of being able to help people from a quality of life standpoint. And if people don't use it, they're not going to get that, and they need to use it frequently. But they can see really big changes, and it's been really amazing for us with our community that we've built that have been working with us on this. We've got a great community of people that we started with from a crowdfunding standpoint who have provided us feedback that have helped us improve the product over time. But the stories that they've had about not being able to walk upstairs, and then now they can, seeing their husband or wife walking through a store and just, kind of breaking down because they haven't been able to do that before. These kind of impacts is exactly why we're here. So that's really kind of the key for us, is being able to deliver on that mission. And for the fact that you've kind of validated that for us from a pricing standpoint, and been able to see again where that work has gone is really awesome to hear from you. So thank you so much for having me on today, and I really appreciate the insights and the great feedback and inputs you've had on the product as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time. But I just want to add one more thing, is that because of thinking about a patient I had these days, is the cool thing is that you gave something or produced something that makes it possible for people to have a kind of treatment, because our medical industry has a very good diagnosis ability or capability. But the problem is, if I have a diagnosis, this is cool, but what I'm going to do now. So I had one patient who saw 4 doctors, 2 physiotherapists who had lower back injury, and he has everything, every test run you could imagine, MRT, CT, whatsoever, you name it. And then you said, yeah, but this doctor said I have this and I have this, and you could clearly see it on the image. And then I said, okay, so but what did your doctor recommend? Well, he gave me syringe, so an analgeticum into the spine, and said, yeah, and then that's pretty much it. So I'm not against medical doctors, not to get me wrong, but the problem is the often and physiotherapists cannot provide you with anything you can do at home. You can see them, you can get treatment, but the treatment stops. The manipulation stops the moment I stop manipulating on you or working on you. Yeah. So, but with this device, you have something you can take home. Maybe someone it's renting it. So but you can take it home, and then you can use it, and you have something as a prehab, rehab, whatsoever. But you can do something even without being or having the necessity to learn and dig into years of medical practice to differentiate if something is valuable or not. So this is as a final word, because this just popped up in my mind, and I wanted to add this. I want to.
100% correct, and I love that statement, because you see that when people are in that downward spiral, sometimes they just need a little bit of pain reduction, and that motion is lotion piece can come back in to help them to kind of improve their patterns there. Yeah, you've really nailed it. Thank you again for having me on today. I think you've got a great view on this, and I can't wait to go further in depth with you in a future call on some of these DMSO and other modalities that you've been training or treating with the light therapy as well.
Thank you, and I want to say thank you for the listeners and the viewers. And as always, I wish you an energetic time. Stay healthy, and till next time. Bye.